Today on the front porch, a controversial mountain rescue.
People say you shouldn't use your cell phones at a good judgment. I agree with that. However, the flip side of that is I'd be dead today if it wasn't for my cell phone. So how do I deal with that? There's two sides to this argument, and I'm on both sides.
In October of 1999, Dr. Bernie Dahl was hiking on Mount Washington when he got lost in a sudden storm. After hunkering down in the snow, he called for help on his cell phone. His rescuers went through an ordeal of their own to bring him back down the mountain, and afterward he was criticized for taking chances and depending on his phone to bail him out. Bernie's learned his own lessons from the experience. He gives public speeches on the subject, and he's planning to write a book. Tonight he tells his side of the story and addresses his critics. I'm John Walters. Join me and Bernie Dahl on the front porch on NHPR. On October 23, 1999, Bernie Dahl nearly died. Bernie is a pathologist, entrepreneur, and public speaker from Winterport, Maine, and an enthusiastic hiker. On that October day, he was hiking on Mount Washington when a change in the weather got him in trouble. He called for help on his cell phone, and after several hours of searching and nearly giving up, a team of volunteer rescuers found him. Afterward, he, without meaning to, became something of a poster child for reckless hikers, those who go up to the mountains unprepared and depend on cell phones to get them out of trouble. As for Bernie himself, he has drawn his own message from his experience and brought it to people in public speeches and on a website, MountWashingtonMisadventure.com. That's MTWashingtonMisadventure.com. And he joins us to talk about it all. Bernie, welcome to the front porch.
Thanks.
So what is the message you took from your brush with death? What message do you bring to people in your speeches?
Having lived a fairly active life and with some good planning and had been sort of a real expert, if you wish, on strategic planning since about 1975, I realized that my planning wasn't always that good. My planning on Mount Washington certainly was less than ideal. And so what I've done over the last couple of years since this misadventure is to rethink strategic planning on a personal level and trying to share that with people who are willing to take me on as a speaker, wherever.
And I suppose one of the messages there is that even an expert can screw up.
Absolutely. I think what part of the message is not only strategic planning, but proper risk management.
Mm-hmm. So what was your plan for that hike on October 23rd?
The plan was really very simple. I've been fortunate and privileged to hike on mountains throughout the world, some big ones and some not so big ones. And all the time when I've gone with guides, we've always carbo-loaded. We loaded up with carbohydrates to ostensibly give us a tremendous amount of energy all the way during the entire trip. The fun thing here, the plan was a simple experiment to simply not carbohydrate. And at that time I was once again on the low carbohydrate diet. And I said, why not go spend 3 days, 1 day in preparation of not eating any carbohydrates, and then limiting myself to turkey and mozzarella cheese and water for the next 2 days of hiking about 8 hours a day, and to see if I really lost my energy, which is what I predicted.
Would you have been better off, maybe, I guess in retrospect it's easy to say, but would you have been better off doing the same experiment on maybe a smaller mountain to start with?
Certainly a smaller mountain, a different season,
yeah,
and certainly with other people.
Mm-hmm. In your mind, how prepared were you for the climb and what went wrong? Was it mostly the weather? Was it?
Yeah, I think I was well prepared as far as boots and rain gear and equipment that is appropriate for weather that is at the valley of Mount Washington. But as I got up on the mountain, when the weather changed, then I was in no way prepared to continue on. The problem was that my plan, my strategic plan, if you wish, which went awry, was to get 8 to 10 hours of strenuous hiking on the mountain. And what I did then was, after about 4 hours of hiking, then the weather changed. I decided that I would continue on for another 4 hours, but I would take an easy way home, which I thought, and that was in an area that would take me to the auto road and down the auto road home to safety.
Had you hiked Mount Washington before?
Oh, yeah, ever since I was a child at Camp Brookwoods on Lake Winnipesaukee. And as soon as after I graduated from medical school, several friends of mine, we all climbed Mount Washington together. I have pictures of us with shorts on. And that was in the summer, fortunately, but I know the weather in Mount Washington can be dreadful in the summer. And arrogant as we were, we had pictures of ourselves sitting next to the sign saying that Mount Washington has very bad and unpredictable weather.
So when you said that you prepared that October day for the conditions as they existed in the valley, you knew in some part of your brain anyway that it was possible that you could run into anything on Mount Washington,
yes.
Especially in late October. There was a pretty good chance that
Yeah.
you might run into bad weather
Right.
that would require more clothing than you actually brought.
Right. There's no question that on the calendar, October 23rd is the fall, not the winter. But as you ascend, obviously, conditions change, number one. Number two, because of the winds, the high winds and the change of the weather on Mount Washington, the weather itself can move in, usually from the west or northwest, very, very rapidly. And that's what I experienced.
So how bad did it get weather-wise?
Well, it's interesting. I went up to Tuckerman's Ravine during the rain, and I was not alone on the mountain, even though I was hiking personally solo. And I came across a stream that I just simply could not ford. Had I tried to ford and fallen in, I would have literally been swept down into Tuckerman's Ravine. So I had some good judgment at that point and turned around and continued back down again to the Hermit Lake hut. And I spoke to the last a person on the mountain that was one of the guides there, and planned the rest of my trip, which was an indirect and a long trip going to the auto road. And that was the plan was it's like from Brer Rabbit. Some of us are old enough to remember Brer Rabbit, who said the shortest way is not always the safest way home. This was a fairly long hike back up what's called Lion's Head Trail, and across the Alpine Garden Trail to the auto road and back home. That was a very simple plan.
So what went wrong?
Well, what happened was, I'm not sure how wrong from when I look back at that moment. As I went up the Lion's Head Trail, the rain changed to snow, and those huge snowflakes that you see at that interface at 32 degrees. And they, instead of that band that you usually expect, where you go from rain to sleet or ice, and the trail becomes slippery, it didn't. It went right to snow, and the snow stuck. And it was not at all slippery.